Welcome to episode 5 of our series, which is last episode of the series, The Age of Pirates. Watch previous 4 episodes of this series. I will provide link of playlist in description. In this episode, we'll be discussing the end of the Golden Age of Piracy. The Golden Age was a period in the late 17th and early 18th centuries when pirates were at their most successful and notorious. But what led to the decline of this era and the eventual demise of piracy as we know it? Join us as we uncover the events that marked the end of the Golden Age of Piracy. To understand the end of the Golden Age, we need to look at some factors and reasons. One of the main reasons behind the decline of piracy was the increased naval presence in pirate-infested waters. Nations such as Britain, France, and Spain began to dispatch more ships to protect their merchant vessels and combat piracy. In addition, these nations also began to coordinate their efforts and share intelligence to better combat the pirate threat. This coordinated effort resulted in a significant decrease in pirate attacks. Another factor that contributed to the end of the Golden Age of Piracy was the changing attitudes towards piracy among the general public. As piracy became less romanticized and more widely condemned, it became more difficult for pirates to find support and sanctuary among coastal communities. This loss of support made it harder for pirates to replenish their supplies and recruit new crew members. The efforts of pirate hunters also played a significant role in bringing an end to the Golden Age of Piracy. Woodes Rogers, a former privateer, was appointed governor of the Bahamas in 1718 with the mission of putting an end to the rampant piracy in the area. Rogers employed a mix of persuasion and force, offering pardons to pirates who surrendered and threatening severe punishment for those who continued to resist. His efforts were ultimately successful, and by 1720, piracy in the Bahamas had been largely eradicated. As the Golden Age of Piracy came to a close, many former pirates sought to turn their lives around and obtain legitimate employment. Some became fishermen, while others joined the Navy or merchant marine. However, others continued to engage in piracy or other forms of criminal activity, leading to ongoing conflicts with law enforcement. Another factor that contributed to the end of the Golden Age of Piracy was that perhaps the most famous pirate hunter of all was Blackbeard's nemesis, Lieutenant Robert Maynard. Maynard led a group of men to Ocracoke Island in North Carolina, where he engaged in a brutal battle with Blackbeard and his crew. Maynard emerged victorious, killing Blackbeard and effectively ending his reign of terror. These pirate hunters and their efforts played a significant role in the end of the Golden Age of Piracy, as they disrupted the pirate networks and eliminated some of the most notorious pirates of the time. But what was the impact of the end of piracy on international trade and commerce? The decline of piracy allowed for increased safety and security on the high seas, which in turn led to more efficient and profitable trade routes. However, the end of piracy also had a significant impact on the economies of coastal communities that relied on piracy as a source of income. Finally, the end of the Golden Age of Piracy had a significant impact on international trade and commerce. Throughout the early 18th century, piracy was a major threat to merchant ships and trade routes across the Atlantic, Indian, and Pacific Oceans. The constant threat of piracy forced many nations to increase their naval presence, leading to increased costs and efforts in protecting their trade interests. As piracy began to decline, international trade routes became safer and more efficient, leading to an increase in commerce and economic growth. With the decline of piracy, merchants were able to travel longer distances and engage in trade with new markets, leading to an expansion of global trade networks. This, in turn, led to the rise of powerful trading nations, such as Great Britain, who were able to capitalize on the newfound opportunities of a more secure trading environment. However, the end of piracy also had negative effects on certain economies. Many ports and towns that relied heavily on the pirate trade saw a decline in economic activity and struggled to adapt to the changing environment. Additionally, many former pirates were left with few alternatives for earning a living and turned to other forms of criminal activity, leading to new challenges for law enforcement agencies. Overall, the end of the Golden Age of Piracy marked a significant shift in the global economic landscape. While the decline of piracy led to greater security for international trade routes and the expansion of global commerce, it also brought challenges for those who relied on the pirate trade and resulted in new forms of criminal activity. In conclusion, the end of the Golden Age of Piracy was the result of a combination of factors, including the increasing strength of colonial powers, the actions of naval forces, and changing economic conditions. However, despite the decline of piracy in the Caribbean, the legacy of the Golden Age continues to capture the imaginations of people around the world to this day. Thank you for joining us for episode 5 of our series, and we hope you've enjoyed this series of the Age of Pirates.